Hey everyone, this is the first video of the recording basics chat room thread type thing we're doing. So I've put together a keynote that I'm going to walk through. So I want to start with the principles of it, because if you don't understand like why you're doing this and how you're doing this, then it doesn't really matter. So let's just get into it. All right. So when we're recording, really what we're doing is turning sounds in the air into a medium we can manipulate. So before we knew how to record stuff, the only way to record anything, before we knew how to record stuff, in order to hear music, someone had to stand in front of you and play it. Then all of a sudden we figured out how to put it down on a medium. Now at first we didn't know how to manipulate it. The microphone just went directly onto a record or into wax or whatever it was. But now we figured out all sorts of ways to do that as the years go by. We figured out analog ways at first, for the first, 80, 100 years of recording. And now, of course, almost all recording is done digitally. So this is what analog recording looked like. This is a cool device where they kind of put the mixer part of this and the tape part of this together. And so you can kind of see the whole process. I went ahead and downloaded a video of someone messing with it. This is some reggae track, but let's check it out. Nice shaker part. So in order to be recording anything, those tape decks are rolling. You're literally changing the magnetic signal that's placed onto the tape. Now, each of these channels, this is an 8-channel. Each of these channels is on that one reel of tape. And then moving over to the other one. In the middle is where he's manipulating. I'm pretty sure that's how this works. I don't know that much about analog recording. Yeah. So we get the idea. Now, that's kind of in the middle in terms of complexity. On the top here is a 4-track. And so you'd put like a small cassette tape into that, and that would work as well. So you've got from left to right, I'm talking about the top one. From left to right, you've got your 4 channels. Right above that is a pan knob. There's an aux knob if you wanted to add any like reverbs or parallel compression or anything like that. Above that EQ, above that gain. So that part looks pretty much like a modern mixer. Over from that is, is a master fader, and then on the right, all the recording stuff. On the bottom, and I couldn't find a higher res image that was kind of like this, but is a little bit more full representation. So from left to right, we've got the microphone goes into a preamp, which is built into most current interfaces, but a lot of times you'd have a preamp, microphone into a preamp, into the big mixer, and then if you look all the way to the right is going into the tape machine. Now a lot of times on these big mixers, because you usually would only have 8 tracks to work with, what you would do is you would record, let's say you'd record the whole drum set with 8 channels, kick, snare, overheads, 3 toms, hi-hat. Is that 8? I think so. And then you would do a mix down. So you would mix those and then turn it down to just 2 tracks. And let's say you had a string section and you would mix that down to 2 tracks. And so you would build your band by recording 8 tracks at a time and then mixing it down so that eventually you had your whole, even though it might be originally, 40 instruments, they all had to go down to 8 tracks. And that expanded as time went on, and multiple tape racks. Again, this isn't my strength in terms of knowledge, but the one thing on the just to the bottom right of the mixer, you could have tone stuff. So those are two different reverb units, if I'm not mistaken. So the big plate looking thing is what's a reverb plate or plate reverb. So if you go into any reverb plugin, you can see an option is plate. It's a plate type of reverb. That was an actual literal plate where they would put the sound into that plate. It would vibrate it. Think of like how a cymbal would vibrate, or any piece of metal. If you flicked it, it would vibrate, and then they would pick up that sound another place. And so then they would record that into their board, and that's how that would go. So to go back to this is what we want to do. This was an analog way to do it. Today, we usually want to do this in a digital way. This is not a great looking diagram, but again, I'm throwing this together. It's the best I could find. So all the way to, it explains exactly what I want it to do though. All the way to the left, you're recording voice, for example. You have to use a microphone to turn that into a waveform. Now it's still analog at that point. It hasn't been converted to zeros and ones. So that little green box with the waveform going into the computer, the ADC is analog to digital computer or converter. That's now zeros and ones. Once it's zeros and ones, as it says right in the middle at the top, binary data, and then once it's zeros and ones, you can do all the things that we do in a DAW, whether it's reverbs, volumes, all of the stuff that we do. But we can only do that because we've turned it into zeros and ones. Otherwise, we needed literally an entire room full of stuff. And then obviously to hear it, it's got to come back out. So that it needs to have a digital analog converter and then turn it into, it could be a monitor speaker or headphones, but it needs to turn back into analog sound. All we can hear is sound in the air. So that's how this works in a basic sense. That's what we're doing when we are recording. And here's a quick diagram of what this looks like today with a small digital interface. This is a 2-channel, pretty standard beginning digital interface. And yeah, let's say I wanted to record myself singing and playing guitar. This is exactly how I would do it. On the bottom right, we've got our monitors. You wouldn't necessarily need monitors. I'm sure a lot of you have something like this, have done some recording, and you don't need studio monitors to, as long as you have some headphones, and preferably some headphones that sound pretty good to help you get the right sound. You're gonna be able to really get a great sound. Going into the computer, and then you're probably using some sort of DAW. So this could be Audacity, GarageBand, Logic, Ableton, Pro Tools, Studio One, FL Studio, whatever it is. The zeros and ones are going into that program. You're manipulating them in all sorts of different ways, and then they're coming back out your speakers, headphones, etc. We'll get more into interfaces, but the next lesson I wanted to start. So if you go back to this, we're going to basically go from the left to the right, I think. So I want to start with a microphone, and then the fact that there's some different cables, even at the top here, different cables that are used to record. Quick demo. It's going to be tough for me to, especially video wise, it's going to be really tough for me to actually demonstrate anything, but I'm going to do the best I can. We'll figure it out. We're all figuring everything out at this point. So that's what I've got for today. We're at 9 minutes, so I think I'll stop. Hope you're doing well, everybody. Take care. Hope you learned some stuff about recording. See ya.